Hello, welcome back to the United Mates Football Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Keitel, and joining me here in LA as ever from back in our hometown of London is my co-host, Joe. We do, as usual, also have a special guest for today's show, who we're both very excited to have with us. Today's guest, who also lives stateside like myself, is a fellow podcaster. He's the host of Low Limit Football and Gorani Vision, where he focuses on one of his main passions, Paraguayan football. Our guest also works in the world of football media as a production assistant for NBC Sports and Telemundo Sports coverage of the English Premier League. We welcome Roberto Rojas to the United Mates Football Podcast. Roberto, it's a pleasure to have you with us. How's it going, mate?
Thank you so much for having me. That was a really good introduction. Yeah, I'm super excited to come on. I mean, for all the drama that's going on in the international break, it's always nice to just kind of go out and just talk about things that are going on in the world. So yeah, I'm really excited about this chat, and I cannot wait to see what you guys can get straight at me. Take whatever questions you want.
We're really looking forward to it as well, Roberto. Paraguayan football in particular is especially nothing that we've really been able to kind of showcase on the show until now. So that's exciting for both of us. And you mentioned, speaking of kind of excitement and things going on in the world, Joe, as we record, we experienced yesterday, I think probably the most excitement of the entire international break so far. And that was when Will Smith slapped Chris Rock across the face at the Oscars. Joe, do you think that incident would have needed a VAR review, or do you think it was an obvious red card for foul play?
Yeah, I think if as a standalone incident, it's probably a straight red. Obviously, there is context there, but yeah, just if you see that clip, I think there's no doubt you're getting that red card out. But yeah, God, what a moment! I mean, yeah, who'd have thought that we'd be talking about that? But here we are. But Roberto, as Kai was saying earlier, we're really excited to have you on the podcast. And whenever we have a guest on our podcast, we always start with an icebreaker question. It's normally a bit silly, and this one is definitely very silly. But so, Roberto, we know that you obviously work in football, but we've delved into a fictional football character as well. And this guy is your namesake. He is Danny Rojas from the program Ted Lasso. He's actually he's of Mexican origin. I know obviously you've got more Paraguayan roots, but his catchphrase in the show Ted Lasso is "Football is life." So our icebreaker today for you is to complete the sentence with a word of your choice. So football is whatever. We'll give you time to think, Roberto. But Kai, how about you kick us off? What's your Danny Rojas phrase?
So my Danny Rojas phrase is that football is family. And I would say that because it can be kind of a dysfunctional love-hate relationship sometimes that brings out the best and the worst in us, but it can also bring us together like it has right now with the three of us.
Lovely. That's very nice way of thinking about it. I think I'm going to just go with football is insane, because I feel like, there are a lot of things that are insane at the moment, but in the last 12-18 months, I guess, yeah, it's mirroring general life, but God, football's in a funny old place at the moment. You don't really know where it's going to go next, but look, we all still love it, don't we? We all love football, but I'd go with football is insane. Roberto, you've had a little bit of time to think. What's your Danny Rojas phrase going to be?
Well, I'm going to go a bit more simple in this case and say football is fun. I think most of us who do this, doesn't matter if we work in football, be it in a big media company like NBC Sports, doing podcasts, or just tweeting it on social media. I think the whole point of this is to understand that this is the sport that we've grown up liking, and, one way or the other, even if we have differences of, that we support a team that maybe I dislike, or we have differences in players that are better than the other, in the end, this is all just because we enjoy it. We're passionate about it. And so for me, and I've always had that kind of rooted in me, is that it's supposed to be fun. And if it wasn't fun, then there was no point in doing any of this. So that's my Danny Rojas quote for this podcast.
You mentioned supporting, for instance, rival teams not being necessarily a thing that has to get in the way. Joe and I are proof of that as Arsenal and Tottenham fans, between the two of us. Likewise, football being fun. At the end of the day, I think you can't really simplify it much better. Moving on, and again referencing you talked about growing up, what kind of enjoying the sport. And so when we do get guests on, another thing we like to do is figure out essentially what their football origin story is, so to speak, how they became interested in football in the first place, what those kind of early memories of either watching or playing or supporting the game were that really kind of formed the bedrock of their love for the beautiful game. So what is your football origin story, Roberto?
Well, I think, I always like to like telling these stories, depending on the podcast that I go to, some of them always do ask this question. So it's always great for me to always understand that, it might be a different answer the way I present it, but ultimately the idea is the same. So obviously, like you had mentioned in the beginning, I'm of Paraguayan descent. Obviously, I was born and raised here in the United States. I grew up here in Connecticut all my life. And I like any other kid of immigrants, especially those that come from a country where soccer, football is so passionate. It goes into you when you're born. Obviously, I grew up playing it, and I grew up playing other sports like a kid, like any kid, like growing up in the 2000s and whatnot. Playing basketball, baseball, football, American football. Obviously, here we had big passion for hockey and lacrosse, being it's the Northeast, and they tend to be very popular over there. But for me, football has always been the main sport that I've always enjoyed. I've always remember kicking a ball around, be it in my backyard or going to like this little Sunday league thing that the Paraguayans do in New York, hanging out with my friends. And I played. I was not really particularly a good one. That was always been my dream, was to be a professional player, and who knows, play Paraguay, MLS, Europe, whatever it may be. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case, so I had to go into a different route. And so for me, I've always grown up enjoying just being involved in soccer. I mean, I've always enjoyed like the behind the scenes kind of thing. I mean, I've always been someone that's always wanted to, I'm always a talker. I always like to be very much in the spotlight. I always like to be involved in those kind of things. And for me, I've always also enjoyed watching it on TV, watching the personalities, trying to understand that, one of these days, maybe back then, I would have had that dream of, being played in a stadium full of thousands of people where millions of your friends or, millions of people or a lot of your friends are watching this. So that was always been the dream, but I've always wanted to be in there. I always wanted to be on camera, on TV. And yeah, I mean, eventually that just settled right by the time I was about to graduate high school. I figured that, if I wasn't good enough to be a player, I needed to do something. And I guess just being involved in media was something that just came to me. So, I started working for different types of blogs growing up. When I went to college, and trying to get my name in the door, really, and obviously doing that podcast like you'd mentioned, Low in the Football, that's been done with my co-host Joe Usello for about 8 years now. It's going to be 8 years. It's hard to believe, but so it went from there. And I started trying to gain myself attention. I started doing these podcasts and interviewing people in the soccer media, trying to get my name done. I'm like 17, 18 years old at the time. I'm 24 now, so been doing this for quite some time, and it doesn't feel as if though time has flown by so fast. It almost feels like everything that I've done has been done yesterday. Like right in front of me, I have all the credentials of numerous soccer events that have been around the world, in Europe, South America, North America. That just, it was something that I've enjoyed doing, and I've had fun for it. Yes, it wasn't easy. I mean, there were times of really adversity hitting me, thinking to myself, am I ever going to get something? Am I ever going to feel like I'm worthy enough to work at a big company? And so it just went from there. And thankfully, but before I was about to graduate college, I ended up doing a bachelor's and master's degree in communication and media arts. So that two titles for me are, I guess you could say, shows that I'm a professional of some sense, at least from an educational standpoint. But no, and then I started working for BN Sports. I started working there as a digital content producer. We were just working online, especially during the pandemic when it started, just working at home and just trying to get my name out the door. And now I'm at NBC, just literally weeks after I graduated and getting my master's degree, working for perhaps, I don't want to obviously sell myself and cast my company to the extent, but no, I think we're doing the best coverage of soccer anywhere in this country on TV, covering the best league in the world, I would say. So yeah, it's been quite a great journey for me. And, the fact that I've done so much, and yet I feel like I can do a lot more in these upcoming years. I'm just grateful for the position that I'm in, and hopefully that it continues for quite some time. And it just is a demonstration and the result of the passion that I've always had for the sport.
No, I mean, the way you're talking about it, we can tell the passion you have for the sport, and actually at a relatively young age, you've already built up quite a bit of exciting experience, both, you know, from a production point of view now, but also you've been podcasting, you've you know, been on the kind of more the writing side of things as well. But let's talk a bit about what you're doing at the moment. So at NBC in Telemundo, I mean, I imagine working in the sort of production department, you're a busy guy and there's a lot happening, but what's the most exciting part about your day when you're working at NBC or Telemundo? Is there anything in particular that you particularly enjoy about your current job?
Well, I think what I've enjoyed working there has been just the people that you're working. I think obviously, you know, a job is always good. This is in my book personally. It's like, you know, any job in the world, doesn't matter how boring or exciting it can be, you know, as long as you have like coworkers that are willing to feel the same way as you do, then it makes it much more enjoyable. And I'm thankful enough to work at a company where a lot of people enjoy this sport. I think they really put in their effort and their energy towards it. You know, the fact that, you know, we could be watching a game of an Arsenal Tottenham and we could talk about how Arsenal are looking good because, you know, maybe they didn't qualify for Europe, but the fact that they have such young players under Arteta that might help them in the future, or how's Tottenham going to play under Antonio Conte, you know, switching formations and getting these new players in from loan. So it's just those kind of little tidbits, and it doesn't matter what game happens. It could be an Arsenal Tottenham, a Manchester United Man City, or a Norwich Burnley. There's always something to talk about, and I feel like that's something where I feel like, even for myself, you know, I've been able to do a lot of things there, working in production, being someone that works, you know, with the talent, with, you know, people like Rebecca Lowe, Robbie Mustoe, Robbie Earl, Tim Howard, those that you've been used to seeing on TV for so many years. You know, the fact that I'm able to work with them directly, it feels like, you know, one day you're just seeing them on TV, and the next day you're right there in close proximity. So for me, I think the most exciting thing is that I'm able to contribute to to coverage that is really something that you have to feel proud of, and it's a huge responsibility as well. I think when you've been at such a high standard for quite some time, and, you know, I think everyone has their opinions and whatnot, but like, you can't disregard the fact that we've done so much to help grow the sport of soccer in this country, at least over the last decade or so. It comes with huge responsibility, and that goes to anyone. You can go from the producer to the director to even the production assistant that started just yesterday or something. So I think for me, it's the challenge and just the unpredictability that can happen that really makes me enjoy it. But overall, I think the coworkers as well, who enjoy the sport as well, have always been such a pleasure to work with, and have also made the job very enjoyable.
Like you said earlier, Roberto, football is fun, and that obviously helps when, you know, you're working with people that share your passion for the game, and, you know, you're working, like you said, for a great company like NBC with some pretty cool talents. So that makes complete sense. I guess I have one more other question for you in terms of kind of what you're doing there at the moment. I mean, you've obviously done your podcasting, you've done your writing, you've done production work now. I mean, do you ultimately have a goal of perhaps ending up in front of the camera one day at NBC? Is that something for you that's an aim of yours?
Yeah, I mean, I've been able to do a lot of this stuff behind the scenes. I don't see why I couldn't be able to do something in front of the camera. You know, the fact that I've done, you know, numerous interviews like this one right here, or be it like in any other media outlet in the world, I feel like, for myself, I feel confident in my skills. And yeah, I mean, it's a different world. You know, it's different from them when you're working behind the scenes and telling talent what to do than now being asked what to do. So it's a different world, but yeah, I mean, I don't see why it's not an issue. I mean, there's so many, I think, people out there that want to be on camera. You know, you have people that are content creators, be it those on YouTube or Twitch or TikTok or any of those kind of mediums, that are just trying to make themselves notable, make themselves relevant. And I think for me, in the position that I'm in, I don't see why it wouldn't be an issue for that. But slowly but surely, hopefully that dream can come. I say dream, but more of a goal that can come in the next few years.
I mean, they've already got the 2 Robbies, you know, over.
They need a third one. Yeah, they might as well need a third Robbie.
The 3 Robbies. There you go. or the three Robertos if they want to play ball that way.
Exactly.
But moving on, we're going to actually jump into a game. It's one that we've played actually, I think, kind of recently on the podcast. That was for the first time in a while. Otherwise, it's been a mainstay that we've stuck with throughout our 100+ episodes. It's called Who Are Ya? And the kind of aim of the game is going to be guessing a mystery player based off of a very, very kind of measly clue that I'll give you to begin with. But you guys can both, between the two of you, ask as many questions as you'd like. For today's mystery players, the links are going to be kind of Paraguay related to have a common theme. Otherwise, let's see. This first player scored. So this first player is not Paraguayan, but he scored against Paraguay at the 2006 World Cup. And he's a bit of a Premier League legend himself. So have at it with as many questions as you'd like, guys.
Okay.
I think I know this one. Let's see if Joe knows it first.
Oh no, Roberto, you go for it. I'm trying to work out your Paraguay.
Yeah. No. I remember this one. It was the 2006 World Cup, the game against Sweden. I believe it was the second group stage match. That just shows how good my memory is. And I love the connection to the Premier League, given that it's from a team that you support who has been so influential. It's the Swedish player, Freddie Ljungberg.
It is indeed Freddie Ljungberg, also a former model as well as a former footballer. Great answer. You're one up in this kind of who are you battle between Joe and yourself. We got a couple more of these. This second player didn't gain Paraguayan citizenship until he was 25, but he's still playing in his original country of birth, now aged 37.
Right.
Ooh.
Okay.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Is he playing in another South American country?
Yes, he is.
Okay. In Argentina?
Yep.
Okay, that's getting somewhere. 37 years old.
He's played in a major European league at one point, and he actually won that league, possibly twice.
Is La Liga we talking?
No, we're not.
Is it the Bundesliga?
Yeah, you're onto something, Roberto.
I think I am. Unless you got something, Joe. Do you mind me asking?
No, I'm struggling. No. Bundesliga. It sounds like I probably will. Yeah,
you'll be aware of him, Joe.
I know it is. Used to be coached by Jurgen Klopp at Borussia Dortmund. Lucas Barrios, the striker.
It is indeed Lucas Barrios, who I always thought was pretty good, and it was a bit surprising to sort of see the route that the rest of his career took after that point, because it seemed like he might have had maybe another bigger move in him. I think he kind of went to China directly from Germany, and yeah, sometimes that can kind of slow down your momentum. But we got one more of these. Maybe Roberto's going to get all three unless Joe can stop him.
We'll see.
This one's an interesting one. This player suffered one of the most bizarre off-field injuries that you could ever imagine, and managed to recover from it. Again, probably even more surprising than the actual injury himself, to have a technically end to his career, but he was never the same after that.
God. So if it's a terrible injury,
off the field injury.
Yeah, not a football related injury.
Does he did he ever play in the Premier League, this guy?
He, I believe, only played in South America.
Only South America. God.
Oh, wow.
God. This is tricky.
I'm getting stumped by this. Hang on.
He's
a striker?
Yep.
Okay.
Did he play in Mexico?
He did play in Mexico.
Oh, I think you're onto something. I think
I am.
Two different clubs.
I think you've got to go for it, Roberto.
Yeah, I know this one. Yeah. As soon as I heard striker, I'm like, no, I know what this is. Salvador Cabañas.
It is Salvador Cabañas, who famously was shot in the head in a nightclub. I
Right
think
before
this was like
right before the 2010 World Cup.
yeah, just before he claims that the incident was instigated because of that, that they didn't want him to go to the World Cup because then Paraguay would have won.
Yeah, no, there was actually another story to that. Actually, he was even linked to go to Manchester United. Actually, after that
Oh
World
wow.
Cup, and because of that injury, they had to look at some other player from Mexico.
Ah, well, that's fate right there,
Mexican
I
player,
guess.
Oh, that's
Chicharito.
interesting. Yeah.
And in a very, very roundabout way, the city where I live, Los Angeles, has yeah, fallen into that as well, where Chicharito now plays. But well done, Roberto. That's a clean sweep. You got all three of those, and pretty quickly as well, which leaves us plenty of time to chat a bunch more about Paraguayan football, huh, Joe?
Yep, indeed. Yeah, I mean, quite gutted about that. I was stumped, but we move on, and we're going to talk first about the national team, the national Paraguayan team. And I know, Roberto, it's not the best time to be a supporter of the Paraguayan national side, given with World Cup qualifying, it's not been going so well. I know actually in their last game at the time of recording, they actually beat Ecuador, so that was something. But just for our listeners who might be not too clued up on the Paraguayan national side at the moment, why is this World Cup qualifying campaign not gone to plan?
Yeah, I mean it's been quite of a frustrating campaign. Paraguay missing out on a third straight World Cup. This is with a team that prior to Brazil 2014, the first of the three that they missed out. This was a team that made it to four straight. From France '98 to South Africa 2010. So it's a bitter taste, I think, for not just for myself, who obviously grew up watching that Paraguay team at numerous World Cups, but for a lot of Paraguayan fans. So yeah, I think this campaign has just been it's such a weird one because I recall those three, and the first one was when this was right after they had made it to the quarterfinals of the World Cup, and they actually finished runners up in the Copa America the following year, despite not winning a single game. They ended up going as one of the best third place teams, and then winning the penalty shootouts in the quarterfinals and the semifinals to then go to the final and lose to Uruguay. So yeah, it's been weird, really, to see this Paraguay side that I think has just been too hampered by the past. And I think the ideas of maybe the FA and those that are involved in the sport has just been very much mediocre in the way that they're handling. I think we do have some players that are playing, across Europe. Obviously, the big one in Miguel Miron, who's playing at Newcastle United, but you have other players that are playing across in Italy. You got some as well in Brazil and across North America in MLS and Mexico. But yeah, I think it's just been the inconsistency in trying to find an idea, like what is working, where are we finding the future talent. I mean, this is also, I think, for me, a more important factor is the youth, the national teams, the U20s and the U17s. They haven't really been competitive as much. Yes, the U17s have made it to World Cups, but it's more the U20 sides, and that generation of players that we're seeing now was the build of a team that went to the U20 World Cup in 2013. So you have that generation of players, and we haven't been back since. So it's frustrating to see, I think, how a Paraguay side has been very much mediocre, I would say, during this entire process. But I think you also have to look at the other teams in South America. I mean, you're looking at a Peru side that, at the time of recording, could indeed make it to their second straight World Cup if they qualify. And this was a Peru side that made it to a World Cup for the first time in 36 years. Now they're going back to a second straight one. You have a Colombia side that might be missing out, despite them making it to the last two World Cups and been so competitive in South America. Chile, they could miss out, and they were Copa America champions, and they've had a good run over the last decade or so. And I think just the field of play has just been so competitive in South America that it's open for anyone. There are no surprises. I think people in Paraguay perhaps are underestimating that a little bit, that you aren't getting those kind of like minnows and underdogs anymore. It's almost as if, and in South America, people always like to say that is the toughest qualifiers in the world, and rightly so. I mean, it's open for anyone. There's still that level of unpredictability that can happen. But I think ultimately, looking at it from a really short perspective of this whole thing, I think it's just a lack of an idea that is able to trust its youth. no formal plan. They've gone through, I think, like 8 managers ever since 2012 or something along those lines. So yeah, there's no consistency, no plan, and yeah, so I think that's kind of been my long answer to this simple question. But I think it's just the case of like so many things going on behind the scenes that nothing has been going on and working that allows them to see results on the pitch.
Is there a name maybe from within Paraguayan football or from within maybe a time of a positive time in the past of Paraguayan football who might be able to emerge and kind of grab a hold of the national team's future, or at least from kind of a background structural perspective, to give them a bit more prosperity moving forward?
Yeah, that's the that's the $1 million question. Like, who can come to save this team? I mean, there's been so many names going along. So the FA president, Robert Harrison, who was in charge of the FA over the last 2 campaigns for the World Cup, and obviously didn't qualify for it. He's going to step down at the end of the year. So that means there's going to be elections, and there are many names that maybe will be touted to go for that FA position to be the president. I mean, you have some out there that perhaps are already doing well domestically. I mean, there's also been the name of the former, this used to be the former president of Club Libertad, which was one of the toughest, better teams in Paraguay, has been so competitive, but also he used to be a director of the national team. And I guess his big claim to fame was that he was the president of the country itself, Horacio Cartes. So yeah, funny how things work that way. So he's been a name that I think many people are perhaps looking to save this side, if you want to go into quotations. But it's funny that we talk right now, just about 24 hours removed from the game in CONCACAF, where Mexico just barely defeated Honduras in qualification. The manager of that Mexico side is Tata Martino, obviously former Argentina coach, former Barcelona coach, used to also coach Atlanta United when MLS was at MLS, and he also coached that Paraguay side that made it to the World Cup and had their best showing. So perhaps there is a sign of him coming back, depending on what happens in Mexico. I mean, we have to see first if they make the World Cup. We don't know if that's going to happen, but I think ultimately, his time will be done unless Mexico win the World Cup or something. But I think keep an eye on that and see if perhaps Tata does return to Paraguay and returns in a way that perhaps can present ideas in a new look Paraguay FA to help them really go for the World Cups in 2026 and Copa America before that. They still have a manager right now in Guillermo Barros Schelotto, the former Boca and LA Galaxy manager. So we have to see if his future is still intact with the new FA president. So yeah, I mean, honestly, guys, I can't really give you an honest answer as to like who can save this team, but I think there are some potential names that can indeed be an influence for the future of this team.
Hopefully, because I think within all of our lifetimes, Paraguay have always been a pretty entertaining team when they have been able to make it to the World Cups. Speaking of a player that you mentioned in particular earlier, Miguel Almiron, in 2019, not too long ago, that's when Newcastle United snapped him up for what was then a club record fee, obviously before the Saudi Arabian money. From Atlanta United, they spent around $27 million supposedly, which is still actually a record fee paid for an MLS player. So this was kind of seen at the time as the signing from the MLS to a major European league that would in turn prove kind of the quality of the players that have been playing in the MLS of recent years. Long has kind of the MLS been, from the outside perspective, kind of criticized and seen as a retirement league, whatever you want to call it. But Almiron's performances were always going to kind of make or break that answer. And so far, I'd say it probably hasn't worked out exactly as Miguel Almiron would have wanted in the Northeast, and probably hasn't worked out exactly how kind of fans of the MLS and Paraguayan fans might have liked either. Is that on the managers that he's played under, Benitez, Bruce, and Howe, or is Miguel Almiron the common denominator when it comes to this?
Well, yeah, I mean that I think this is always going to be a debate for when he does eventually leave the club as to like what his legacy was, because this was a player that was initially Rafa Benitez's player. He came in, he was the one that put in the effort in telling Mike Ashley and those that work at the club to sign this player because he thought that he had the talent. And yeah, it was always going to be a risk, and I think he was the one that wanted to take that risk of being a high level MLS player. And we've had MLS players who were bred in that system who went to Europe. I mean, another big one that I'm talking about is like Alphonso Davies. He went from Vancouver Whitecaps to Bayern Munich, and now he's one of the best left backs in the world, maybe the best if you really wanted to go at it. But in any case, I think for Almiron, the question marks were already going to be there. It's like, is the talent that he produced in MLS, will that really produce similar quality in the Premier League? And after over 100 games and whatnot, yes, it obviously has not been as impressive now looking at hindsight, and obviously looking at other players that the club has brought in and who have performed in better aspects. So yeah, it's so weird, really. It's such a weird player. I had such high hopes for him, as like a lot of Paraguayans did, because obviously this is a player that is considered the best one right now, or at least the most talented one playing in the best league in the world. Okay, it's not the best team, but it's still a big club in Newcastle United. So um honestly, I think there is something there. I think they still has some talent. I mean, you still see a player that was playing in multiple positions. I mean, this was someone that was playing wing back, center attacking mid, left winger, right winger, striker. So he's been so overused in so many different positions. And yes, while he wasn't able to show his best under Steve Bruce, because obviously that's when he was, I guess, that was the majority of the time where he got his goals and whatnot. And now he's with Eddie Howe, and he's not demonstrated anything that makes him a starting player at Newcastle United, especially if they can get more players in. But yeah, I just think that he just didn't have the chance to really perform consistently in a position that he's always been good at. I've always said it over the years that his position has always been as a number 10 or as a winger, as a left winger, because that's where he's able to cut in, or he's able to make those passes, or he doesn't have a good eye for goal. And he scored in the Ecuador game a couple days ago, but ultimately he's always been a provider, and we know that. But yeah, it's really weird to think about it now in hindsight, because I think the intensity of the Premier League is so different as to MLS. He's a fast player. We've seen it. He's not exactly the strongest one, but you could see him putting his work effort. But ultimately, I think it's also up to him, to make those chances. He had a lot of missed chances. He's not able to be on his feet a lot. Yeah, I think ultimately once his departure comes, and I do think he leaves in the summer. I think anyone that's kind of following the rumors of this whole big exodus, because Newcastle are going to go in deep with the new influx of money that they have, I think Almiron is going to be one of the ones that are going to be shipped out. And yeah, let's see what he can do in a different league. I hope that he does stay in Europe, perhaps at a top five league, and just being right there as a consistent starter, and hopefully he can regain some of that talent that he can still produce for the national team, still in his prime years.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be really interesting to see where he ends up in the summer. Obviously, not guaranteed he will go, but like you said, that it feels like it could happen. And yeah, there's undoubted quality there. He just needs to go and play a bit more regularly. And like you said, maybe play in that number 10 role and get back to doing what he does best and providing for his teammates. So we obviously talked about Almiron, a current player, but let's talk about someone from the past. And this is a guy, I guess, Premier League fans will have a soft spot for, and Roque Santa Cruz. He obviously played in the Bundesliga and La Liga too, but we got to see him for a fair bit with Blackburn, where he was very good, and then obviously he was at Man City as well. Didn't really get the chance to play as much yet, but he's obviously, this is the striker that has scored a lot of goals both in club football and for his national side too. Roberto, is Roque Santa Cruz the best ever Paraguayan player?
I mean, I think if you look at it in hindsight, he's definitely the one that's made it more successful, at least in a European standpoint. I mean, this was a guy that played like you said, for Bayern Munich, played at Blackburn Rovers, played at Man City, played in La Liga. He won the Champions League for Bayern Munich there. So yeah, I mean, I think the debate's always going to be between him and Jose Luis Chilavert, the famous goalkeeper that scored all those goals for Vélez Sarsfield and has been the captain of that team. This was before Roque's generation. So there's always going to be that big debate. But, I grew up watching Santa Cruz, and, I just missed the boat on Chilavert just right when I started to watch football. He started retiring, and that's when Roque came in. And yeah, I mean, for me, I think he's always been such a crucial player. He's, all-time top goal scorer for Paraguay, 32 goals, over 100 games, made it to 3 World Cups, and he's always going to be remembered as one of the best Paraguayan players ever. Whether or not he's the best one, that's up to debate, because I think the big what if of Roque's career has always been injuries. I mean, this was a player that you look at him, he's very tall, he's like 6'4" or something like that, but he's also very skinny, and with that big body of his, was it able to withstand the pressures of a Bundesliga or a Premier League or a La Liga? I think that's where he was still able to get goals for those teams, but I think he could have been a bit better. I think he could have just had a bit more to him if those injuries didn't come about. I think if that were the case, again, this is all hypothetical, so I have no idea what could have happened, but if indeed that was the case, then I think that, yes, I think he would have been considered maybe the best ever. I still think just because he was regarded as the best goalkeeper in the world 3 times, and he's won so many titles, and he's regarded as one of the best in his position of all time, I think Chilavert gets first place for me, at least from a historical standpoint. But Roque is right there, at least, top 5 for sure. Top 3, that's up for debate, but definitely among the greatest to play for Paraguay, and just representing Paraguay as a whole for the world.
What's crazy is he's still going, I think, at the age
of 40 years old. That's right.
Playing for Libertad, who also on their books have another great striker, Oscar Cardozo, I think age 38 now. And of course, once of Sunderland fame, Christian Riveros at age 39. That was a move, another one to the northeast of England. Maybe that's a sign. Maybe the Christian Riveros move should have been a sign to Miguel Almiron not to join Newcastle in the first place.
Or go to Tyneside Tyrion, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Just leave that part of England out of it, maybe. But again, you mentioned Jose Luis Chilavert as, up there with Santa Cruz as possibly between the two of them, some of the most iconic Paraguayan footballers in the history of the sport. He has that reputation because of the free kicks in terms of maybe a more global audience who wouldn't maybe have been able to respect his skills as a, just someone stopping the ball from making it into the back of the net. He also, had the bulldog on the kit sometimes to kind of mimic his nickname El Bulldog. Just how good, again, I know you mentioned him being slightly before your time. I think Joe and I probably caught the tail end of his career at the 2002 World Cup. What's his reputation in Paraguay? Because I think from the outside, he's almost got that kind of Higuita kind of like legacy moment when Higuita did, the iconic scorpion kick save against England, and Chilavert's got like the bulldog on his kit and he's got the free kicks. But there's got to be a lot more to his game than that.
Well, I think more than that, he's just a personality more than anything. This was a guy that never came out without a fight. He always spoke about how he felt. I mean, even to this day, he's still speaking about corruption from FIFA, from CONMEBOL, and from all of that. I mean, he even got into a bit of beef with an artist that was actually supposed to perform in Paraguay in a festival. And it got canceled, and this prompted a lot of reaction on Twitter because of her silence. Doja Cat, the famous artist, so literally saying, "Who are you, Doja Cat? You've never won anything," and basically just shutting her up. So yeah, this one is always
bulldogs don't like cats.
I guess not. Yeah, that's it. That's what Tom and Jerry taught us, I guess. But yeah, he's I would say that on the pitch he was fantastic. I mean, he's one of the greatest of all time in terms of his positions. Second all-time goal scorer in history, only behind Rogério Ceni, the Brazilian goalkeeper, only goalkeeper to score a hat trick. He's played in the World Cup. I think he's had like 8 international goals or something. So obviously top goal scorer in that position, but he's also someone that could be a bit of a controversial figure. He has his understanding of I'm just speaking very conservatively. I mean, I don't want to compare him to anyone politically, but you could almost say that he's kind of a mixture of a Donald Trump with a Jair Bolsonaro, if you want to go with that. Yeah, that's kind of like that. It's almost very much similar. Not, I don't think he's that extreme. Yeah, I don't think he's that extreme as those two, but it's definitely a love child of those two. But yeah, I think he's just someone that has always been worthy of his roots, which is respectable. He was a player that grew up poor. You know, he always well, I've had the chance of meeting him, but my dad, you know, he's of a similar age group. He's in his 50s as well, and he's always had the chance of meeting Chilavert and speaking to him, and how both of them have similar stories. They grew up poor. They came from farms. They literally had to sacrifice their life to make their families' lives better. So obviously Chilavert was a successful player, whether my dad wasn't. But in any case, the fact that I think he was just someone that really was really rooted into his position, and that he felt proud to be Paraguayan. He really wanted to say that, hey, you know, we're not just a small country in the heart of South America that is going to be played around by like Argentina or Brazil or anyone. You know, we have much more to offer, and we're going to literally come out in a fight if we need to. And that's why I think he's had that mentality of making these. I think that's where it all started, really, when Paraguay made it to those 4 World Cups. I think the genesis of all that was from Chilavert's influence, and how that was passed along to the younger players, who then passed it on to the other players, and it just from then on it hasn't come back since. Yes, the sport has changed a lot since the 90s, and you know, maybe Chilavert doing this nowadays in 2022 might cause some issues on like Twitter. I mean, if people wanted to go really, really bad, maybe they go out and say that they'll probably go out and cancel him. Maybe not to the extent of Will Smith punching Chris Rock, but slapping Chris Rock, but maybe to that extent. Maybe you compare him to like maybe a Zlatan or something, just someone that is an outspoken character and will say whatever is on his mind, and he doesn't really care what happens. So ultimately, I think his legacy, at least for a newer generation, is very much of doubt because of his outspoken claims, and how perhaps he's not really a fan of modern football. But at least for the older generation, I think they still see him as someone that really flew the flag for the entire world, and really demonstrated that, hey, you know, this isn't a small country. We're not going to be played around by anyone, and we're going to demonstrate who we really are, and tough shit if you're not into it. So it's that. I think that's the legacy of Jose Luis Chilavert for many Paraguayans.
I think in a time of, you know, a lot of TikTok and kind of drip videos and things like that, you know, the game misses some, you know, obviously there's certain things that we're not all going to agree with, certain controversial things, but those types of characters, the game sometimes misses a little bit in these days. Moving a bit more away though from Paraguayan football, and actually back to what it is that you are up to at NBC with the Premier League. We are going to talk about the league that Joe and I both grew up watching, and it's been another disrupted season due to COVID, but the last 10 games or so for the rest of the teams are shaping up pretty nicely for an exciting finish to the campaign. Title race is very much on still between Man City and Liverpool. 4th place is up for grabs, with mine and Joe's clubs well in the mix for that final Champions League place. And it's still pretty unclear as to which of the 3 clubs out of 6 or so down at the bottom are going to be getting relegated, except for probably Norwich. Anyway, so I think we should all give some quick predictions, and then we can debate our choices a little bit after that. We'll make this kind of quick before we wrap up. I'll go first, give you guys a bit more time to think. So I think the top 4 in order, I'm going with Liverpool first, Man City second, Chelsea third, and then I have to put my team Arsenal in at 4th. And then bottom 3 in no particular order, I have Norwich, Watford, and I'm going to put Everton in there as well. Joe, how do our picks compare?
Quite similar, I guess. For the top 4, I'd probably have Man City actually winning the league. I think it will be close. I just think their squad will just push them over the line. Then Liverpool and Chelsea. I guess the big one is, who do I put at 4? It's probably between Tottenham and Arsenal. I probably say that, and Man U will go on to get it, but I do think it's between Tottenham and Arsenal. My heart says obviously to say Tottenham. At the moment, it pains me to say this, maybe Arsenal are going to do it. I'll say Arsenal begrudgingly, but I think it will be close, and Spurs still have to play Arsenal. So who knows? Things can change very quickly, and we're just so inconsistent at the moment. I don't know if I can really back us to grab top 4, but I think we'll be there and thereabouts. In terms of bottom 3, I actually agree with you, Kai. I mean, Norwich will go down. I think they're not very good, unfortunately. And Dean Smith's trying his best, but it's not really working. Watford, maybe they'll have a late charge at staying up with Roy Hodgson there. But yeah, I don't know. I think it might be too little too late at this point, because I think Burnley, of the teams down there, might be the one with Sean Dyche. They just seem to have a habit of getting wins when they need to do it. So I back them to do that again, which leaves Everton to get relegated. Obviously Leeds and Brentford are in the equation, but I think Everton will go down, and I'd find it quite funny because I don't really like Frank Lampard, but I genuinely just think that Everton are in a really rough spot, even though they did get that quite cool win against Newcastle recently when Iwobi scored. But yeah, Norwich, Watford and Everton for my bottom 3.
All right, Roberto.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really tight, and I think that's what's made working here, at least in my first full season in the Premier League, an exciting one. The fact that I'm privileged in seeing such a tight race where, before then, I think City had that 14-point lead, and I thought to myself, oh my God, is this league going to be done and dusted? And now we're 1 point away between these two sides, and they still have to play each other too in a couple of weeks. So I think I have to agree with Joe on this case. I think Man City will have just enough to qualify. Not qualify, to win the Premier League again for another straight season. I think Liverpool are a very talented side, and we have to see how both these two teams do in the Champions League as well, because they could potentially face each other in that thing as well. So, and also in the FA Cup. So yeah, I mean, talk about a lot of exciting matches hopefully coming up in English football in the next few weeks. I think the top 4 stays the same as of right now. I think Chelsea gets that 3rd place spot. I think Arsenal for, I think you'll be happy to hear that. I'm really impressed by this Arsenal side. I think they have such a good team under Arteta, a lot of young players. I think ultimately not going to a European competition, okay, yes, it's always the obligation for Arsenal to participate in any European competition. Champions League is obviously the one that they've been accustomed to, but I think this one where they missed out was a blessing in disguise, because it allowed them to really focus on that youth. And you see the emergence of players like Emil Smith-Rowe, a Bukayo Saka, an Odegaard, a Martinelli, those type of players coming up and shaping up this team. And I think looking at the other teams, I think Tottenham go into the Europa League, and then United, despite them maybe showing a late showing in the end of the season, I think ultimately those two will qualify for Europe. But I think it stays the same. I for some reason, I think the top 6 stays the same, and the same will go for the relegation zone. I think Norwich, I think will be the first team relegated. It's a matter of when at this point for them. I think Watford also go down, and I mean, Burnley and Everton have a couple games in hand at 27 games, I think, right now, and they still have to play 3 more. So as much as Everton are such a big mess right now, I think for some reason they have something in them that allows them to really save the side from outside of relegation. And I think that, and hopefully this is the case, it'll be a chaotic week if that's gonna happen at work. I think all of these are gonna get decided at the end of the season, like literally in the last 1 or 2 games of the season. The big relegation race, big top 4 race, and a big championship race. So I think ultimately the league table as it stands right now will stay the same at the end of the season. So that's my good predictions. I'm not good at it as well. I always like to do some betting as well, and they tend to not always go the way that I want to. So ultimately, I think one of you guys, your predictions are probably going to be on point in comparison to mine.
But between the 3 of us, we've probably got something in there that's going to look good at the end of the season. My theory, given I was the only one that went for Liverpool, was that if it doesn't just come down to that one game between Liverpool and City, which could go either way, and I wouldn't be surprised if Liverpool are able to win, for instance. I wouldn't be surprised either way, to be honest with you. I just think that if it doesn't come down to that one game, if there's a slip up elsewhere, and it's City who are the ones that slip up, I can see that snowballing, and I can see that becoming a big mental hurdle for them. Otherwise, Arsenal, I'm glad to hear that both of you guys are feeling the confidence that I'm kind of feeling.
I'm definitely
around
not too confident. I just think at the moment, if you're looking at the form take, obviously Spurs have actually been okay, even though we've had this weird kind of win-loss run. But I feel like that win against Villa, I know Villa weren't so good the other day. That felt like quite a big win, to be honest. I don't know. That felt like a game over the last few seasons that Arsenal would go on to lose in a relatively important scenario. But annoyingly, you got the 3 points, and yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I don't want to be excited about Arsenal, but you seem to be doing all right at the moment.
I mean, Spurs have what, like kind of if the Kane Son thing works, then you guys are going to win. Whereas Arsenal have, Martinelli's on form, Odegaard's on form, Saka's on form. Lacazette might not be hitting the back of the net every week, but he provides really good pressing from the front and a good link up play for these exceptional young players to run beyond him and kind of damage other teams. And then as far as Everton, their fixture list is the worst in the entire league. They still have to play so many good teams between now and the end of the season, but you just never know. It's certainly, since we've seen kind of Newcastle relegated a couple times, this would probably be the most outstanding side in the league to be relegated from the Premier League. And I think potentially, besides Arsenal, they might actually be the only team that have never been relegated from England's top flight.
You're right.
There's some weird fact about that. So if anything, that would, another record for Arsenal if Everton could now. But maybe Roberto will give you final say, or if you have any disagreements on anything that we've said.
No, I think ultimately, I think we're in for really an exciting end to the season. I think where you see a lot of leagues kind of deciding their champions. I mean, I think the only ones that have been really still open for the debate has been Serie A. I mean, La Liga might be done and dusted soon. Same for the Bundesliga. Liga is obviously done as well. But I think outside of the Serie A, I think the Premier League is definitely one to look out for. So hopefully an exciting end. And I think whoever wins the Premier League will be a deserved champion, because these two have been neck and neck for the entire season. That I think whoever wins in the end. But I think it would be definitely more sweeter for Liverpool because of the gap that they had to go through early on in the season. I think that would be even very more impressive if they're able to win the Premier League.
Fantastic. Well, that does unfortunately bring us to the end of this podcast today. We've obviously had a great time chatting, but firstly, thanks a lot to my co-host Keitel, as always, and then a special thank you from the both of us to Roberto for joining us and being such a fantastic guest. We really hope you've had a fun time chatting about football with us. And just before you leave, Roberto, how can our listeners best follow you and everything that you're up to at the moment?
No, thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it. It was so much fun. And absolutely. You can follow me on Twitter at Roberto Rojas 97. I'm obviously tweeting about not just all things in football, but other things that I like in sports, lifestyle, culture, anything really. Hopefully that you can also give a follow to my two podcasts, Low Limit Football, the one that I do every week with my co-host Joe Usello, talking about the world of football, demonstrating, like I had mentioned at the beginning of the show, the fun in football. That football is fun, and that's why we are continuing to doing that. And also Guarani Vision, the first ever podcast dedicated to Paraguayan football in English. We try to put out an episode every week as well, talking about what's going on with the Paraguayan teams in, be it domestic league, international competitions, national team, women's game. We're all there to talk about it. So follow, subscribe, check us out on YouTube, Spotify. And thanks again, guys. I really enjoyed it. And hopefully that you guys also have a very much successful podcast in the future.
Cheers, Roberto. The pleasure was absolutely all ours. Best of luck with everything. Best of luck with your podcast. Best of luck to Paraguay as a footballing nation, and of course, good luck in your work at NBC as well. For our listeners, if you enjoyed this podcast, please do subscribe wherever it is that you like to stream your favorite podcasts. Just search for United Mates Football Podcast on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. We are at United Mates FP, so give us a follow on those too. And if you feel like putting some faces to these voices, then you can find us on YouTube. Look for United Mates Football Podcast, and don't forget to subscribe while you're at it. For all of that content and more in one place, The website is unitedmatesfp.com. Until next time, everyone, take care of yourselves and take care of each other. Goodbye.